is Jess here, and I am coming to you from my house garden. This is McGonagall. Coming to you from my house garden in central Victoria, Australia. I've just recently added this garden bed, which is an IBC tank, cut in half, and we've started layering it with some soil. Ideally, I would like to have filled it up a bit more, but I just don't have any more soil type materials, and I am going to do kind of a quick flip bed. This is just going to be some annuals to get going, so once those are done I will top it all up with a bit more nutrients and soil and things like that afterwards. The base layer it's essentially like a frugal culture, which I cut up some logs and twigs and leaves and things like that, layered them in the bottom, took some food scraps and not, particularly broken down compost materials, layered that next. I essentially made a compostable lasagna. So this will continue to work and build up nutrients in the soil, but those things will compact down as they decompose. So this bed will need topping up, but I think for now I'm actually excited about it having this little lip because we are in the middle of winter, and so this is going to provide a little bit of protection for the young seedlings that I'm going to be planting in here today. Oh, can I get down low enough? Yes, I can. So anybody who knows me in real life knows that I can't walk past what I call the sad plant table at our local, hardware supply store. It's where all of the discounted plants and things like that go. You can get punnets of vegetable start seedlings for $1 usually. Everything looks a little bit sad, but with a little bit of love, you can get some totally edible produce and yield out of it at the end, and show you what we're going to be putting in this bed today. So we have some iceberg lettuce. This was originally $4 for a punnet of, I want to say there's 6 in there. It's marked down to $1. Thank you kindly. Same price point. No, wait, this one was $4.99, and it has been marked down to $1 as well. So this is Voy King cabbage. We have again $4.99 marked down to $1 for spinach mini baby leaf. And then I know somewhere back here I also have some marked down spring onions. So they will be a fabulous little addition to the garden as well. So I'm going to just do rows of each of these essentially in this bed. It will be a quick flip for these. If they don't make it, that's okay. It was $1, but even if one of these plants makes it, that was $1 for, a cabbage, or $1 for a lettuce, $1 for some spinach, $1 for spring onions. That is, this angle's not working. I have to get down very low. But even if one plant survives, $1 for a cabbage and things like that is, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's get into it. What we're doing, I'm going to start with the spring onions, and I'm essentially just going to create a trench in this bed. And the plan is to hopefully be able to save as many of these starts as possible. Might make it a little bit deeper because those roots are very well established. Let me show you. We're looking a little bit root bound, but that's okay. We will just gently pry these apart. And there are so many individual spring onions here. Just that one clump that I pulled apart has 5, 6, 7 in it. So there is a lot here. I'm just going to start laying them in the trench as I pull them apart. We may actually need a second trench for these little cuties. There are so many viable plants still in here. It's amazing. Okay, let's speed this up a little bit for you guys because it'll probably take a while. overly particular about the distance between each plant with these, because they're just spring onions. I can cut them, you know, large or small, and you can see that I'm not being overly delicate, because again, these punnets were only $1, and we have 2 punnets worth to go. So I'm going to fill this trench in, just gently pressing them in. One of the things I did include was maybe some not properly finished compost in this bed, and that included some horse manure, so I'm worried I'm going to end up with a lot of weed seeds popping up, but we will see how we go. Okay, I'm going to create a second trench like so, and I keep pulling out little weed seedlings that are starting to emerge. One thing you can do to aid the division of seedlings like this, especially when there's lots of them and they're getting a bit root bound, is you can actually soak these in water to help with the detangling process. But for me, this is just a fast and easy garden bed fill, so I am not being too particular. But if these were, say, more precious plants or, you know, perennials, and I wanted to really space them, you know, in mind with taking, you know, their spacing more seriously. That was a fun sentence, wasn't it? I would do that, but for these guys, I'm not too fussed. I'm just going to be throwing them in the soil and seeing how they go. This is a midwinter garden. Okay, back to getting this done fast, because I have so many other tasks on the garden plan today. These ones feel a little more unruly than the last batch. I think my main aim here is just to make sure all of the roots are covered. I'll be just tucking them in. Some of the clumps are larger than others, but it will be fine. This is all, like I said, an experiment and something to quickly fill the bed to get us through the kind of quieter time in winter when there's less options for growing goodies. Okay. Some of them just want to keep jumping in. There we go. Okay. So that is our spring onions done. Now we are moving on to the baby leaf spinach. So the tag says these mature in 5 to 8 weeks, and they should be planted 15 to 20 centimeters apart. Honestly, I'm going to be pushing that friendship slightly because I want to cram this bed full as much as possible. So let's have a look and see. So again, we're looking at something that's relatively root bound here, but we're just going to gently start prying it apart, not tearing too much because that will, you know, tear off viable roots, but we're going to just start dividing it up to see how many plants we have. And look, some of them are teeny weeny babies, some of them are a bit bigger, some of them are looking a bit sad, but that's okay. As I keep saying, these were my sad plant table editions, and so I didn't expect them to be in primo health. Sometimes when they are being a little bit finicky to pull apart, you do just kind of need to keep detangling and then give them a gentle tug and assume that maybe 1 or 2 might not survive the division, especially when they've been sitting in a pot for probably a little bit too long. But we are looking at a fair few plants here, so once we have an idea of how many plants we've got, we can place them out and see if we can get them, you know, a nice distance from each other. Those two really don't want to come apart, so I'm just going to leave them together. I'll just nestle them in, gently press them down, And I'm going to kind of stagger the placement of them so that they do have a little bit more distance between them. And I'll pick like small plant, smaller kind of seedling, and alternate between smaller and larger so that they have a little bit more space. And we are just nestling them in, making sure again their roots are well covered. And again, I know that I'm planting these closer than recommended, but I think this will be the best use of our space, if I'm being honest. Okay, what's next? It is cabbage time. So it'll be interesting to see how we go with spacing these cuties out. What is their recommended spacing? 45 centimeters apart. I got to admit that is not going to be happening in this situation because we have 2, 4, 6, 8 here. What I might do is I've got another space over in another part of the garden. So I might, these are again quite root bound, you can see. But what I might do is see how we go spacing wise with these, and then we will maybe tuck some in where I've got gaps in the rest of the garden. That being said, looking at the way these roots are falling apart, I am not entirely convinced that these guys are all going to make it, so perhaps we'll just nestle them all together and see how we go. So that, in this instance, let's just kind of place them out and have a think about what that might look like here. Giving them their best chance at survival. Oh, another weed seed. Let's pull that out. There we go. All right, I'm going to go for it. I know that potentially they'll be too close together, but it's an experiment if nothing else. Okay, make sure they're well nestled in. Like so. I'm trying to make sure I'm alternating them slightly from the spinach also so that they're staggered in that way as well. They're not too close together also. Okay, that would mean this one might need to go somewhere like there. I have designed this bed with enough space around it to be able to access it from each side, even if it's going to be at a squish, because I find it very difficult to lean all the way over a bed and reach it from each side. Okay, that's our cabbages in. Now, last one for this bed is the iceberg lettuce. I'm not super convinced these are going to do well, but again, it was $1 to conduct this experiment. So there's only one way to test it, and that is to pop them in. These ones actually are probably like the least root bound. I mean, there's definitely still some roots that are wanting to head around the bottom of the pot, but they don't have as much of a root buildup. And according to this tag, there is no distance between them according to this tag. So we might just do the same spacing that we've done for everyone else. These are coming apart really nicely. So maybe I was underestimating this lettuce's ability to bounce back from its sad start to life. Okay, so again, it looks like we have 8 plants. Be standard for punnets those size. And we are just going to tuck these in. Oh, got to pull those ones apart. Oh dear, that one completely detached from its root. What I'm going to do, because roots are more important than the leaves, so I'm just going to tuck him in and see if he's going to grow back. Only one way to find out. Alrighty, let's get the rest of these in and maybe I'll try and be a bit more gentle with them. Now the last step for me will be watering everything in. We've had a lot of rain these last few days, so I'm not going to give them a very heavy water, but I might include some sea salt liquid fertilizer in a watering can just to give them a kickstart. Main other reason that you might want to water even when it's been raining is to make sure that there's no air pockets in the soil and that there's really good soil contact with the roots. So I'm going to go fill up a watering can. I'll be back. One of the other things that I'm working on this week is I'm starting to build a wildlife corridor, or sometimes like it's called a windbreak. I'm focusing on using predominantly natives or food sources for native critters. I want it to be really pollinator friendly and a habitat for the local creatures. It's going to run down our boundary between our property and the next one over, and I'm hoping to use predominantly fire resistant species as well, because we have, you know, a heightened bushfire risk here in Australia, so it's always smart to plan as sensibly as possible. Now, the windbreak plan is a slow process. For me, I don't have a huge amount of resources to pour into it financially, so I am just picking up a plant here, a plant there, and just working my way down the row. I will show you guys when it has a little bit more going on, but for now I've got some lily pillies and whatnot ready to go in the ground. I'm gonna go do that because we're losing light. I will try and bring you guys along, but if it gets too dark, I will just show you the progress when we have more to report. This is a broad fork. My partner made it for me and it's my new favorite tool. Because we have really dry, compacted soil here and very like heavy clay soil, as much as I love like the no-till method, and that's something we want to move towards, I feel like we need to break up some of that denseness and enrich it with organic matter. And I don't have the patience to do that, or again the resources to do that using purely no-dig methods. So we aren't planning on tilling a lot, but what we will be doing is kind of loosening up the soil. And this broad fork is amazing for that. So these prongs, you drop it into the ground like so, step on it, and then wiggle it back and forth to loosen the soil. That's what I'm going to do now before I start putting in any of those trees that we have. Like so. I can hear that we're hitting a lot of rock, so we will have to dig down and see how that goes. I do this over a patch before I even bother grabbing the shovel to dig the hole for my tree. Let me bring you down and show you what it looks like after we've used the broad fork to loosen it all up. It's pretty easy to get distracted by that sunset view. I mean, the sun technically is setting behind us, but we get some pretty incredible clouds with an amazing glow and an orchestra of glass. But I'm losing light, so I better get back to it. Now it is actually almost hard to tell, apart from seeing little bits of soil here, where I have used the broad fork until you start getting down into it. As you can see, pretty clay-based soil. Does crumble quite well. It's not super sticky. It's not forming really long ribbons, but it is a really diverse set of plants in our paddocks because it has been pretty much untouched as in terms of like human interventions for a really long time, apart from, you know, mowing and whatnot. So what I'm doing is just kind of loosening up this soil, especially because there's big clumps. Loosening up this soil. Gotta love it when you see a worm. Say hello to our little friend. Where did you go? Here he is, just a little fella. Pop him back in there so that he can help to keep the soil nice and healthy. We do have a lot, let's see if I can find a clump, here we go. A lot of onion weed. You see all those bulbs? I'm not even going to attempt to try and battle it because that might be an exercise in futility. What I am going to do is just kind of make some space in this soil for some trees to go. And if I do it with my hands like so, I can crumble up that soil as we go. And then I do have a bag of compost to bring in to add. So I'll go and grab that now. Got some bagged organic compost here. And I'm just going to throw a couple of handfuls in my hole. And what I want to do is I'm actually going to kind of mix it with the surrounding dirt because I don't want the tree's hole to be purely compost, because then it's not going to, yes, hello McGonagall. McGonagall's come to see what we're doing. What I'm going to do is just mix this compost in so that the tree continues to want to put out roots. Off you go. Where'd you go? My daughter has come down to help me plant out some trees, and she doesn't really love me on camera. So I'm going to finish this up. Thank you for hanging out with me today. The dog was so sweaty in my face, it has made my glasses fog up. So that's it from me today at our farm. Hope that was a nice little update for you. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.